Well, good evening and hello, everyone. This is Behind the Mic Radio, and I'm your host, Dawn Mack, and so very glad to be here with you. It has been an absolutely beautiful day, fall day in North Carolina here, and I hope wherever you are, it has been lovely as well. I am enjoying the fact that the temperatures are starting to cool off. The humidity is leaving our state, and football season is in session, and great things are starting to happen now with this wonderful season that we're in and we've been blessed with. So I just want to welcome everyone in, and if you're a first-time visitor to our show tonight, I tell you, you picked the right night to begin to tune in because our guest this evening is second to none, really, and we are very honored to have her with us. And to give you a little bit of a quick background on her, she is a four-time Emmy Award-Winning actress, 3 for her work as Olivia Walton on the acclaimed TV series The Waltons, and 1 for her role as Mary Benjamin in her own series called Nurse. She is also a People's Choice Award winner and 4-time Golden Globe nominee. We are so very proud and honored to welcome Michael Learned. Hello.
Hi, Dawn. It's really nice to talk to you. And I envy you having fall. We're in California. We don't have seasons changing, and I'm from back east, so I used to always love it when the leaves started to turn.
And, you know, ironically, this summer, we did not have the blazing hot summer with the high humidity that we normally do. It was a rather somewhat mild summer at times. It was kind of unusual for us. We weren't accustomed to that. And you being from the East, you probably know all too well what I'm talking about. But I understand out in California, it has been just really bad. I mean, high heat and humidity you've kind of had our weather. So we've kind of interchanged, I guess.
Yeah, they waited. I was in Edmonton for the earlier part of the summer where it was cold and sleety and really rather strange for June and July. I'm not used to that kind of weather in July, but then I came home for the heat in California. September's usually a very hot, dry month, and it's fire season, so it's never my favorite month in California. I love the winter months when it rains and things are green and you feel like the trees aren't gasping for water. But September's a tough month in California. But we're in Santa Barbara at the moment. My husband and I are taking a couple of days off, and it's beautiful here. It's cool, and the sky is blue, and the sun is shining, and it's lovely.
Well, thank you again just for giving us some of your time this evening while you're enjoying some time off, and it really means a lot to us. And I know fans are just excited that you're here and going to share a little bit with us about your amazing career. And speaking of that, I want to first congratulate you on your many accomplishments and your stellar career that has spanned more than 5 decades. I mean, that is quite an accomplishment.
Well, thank you. You know, I can't get over how old I am because, you know, you never think when you're young, you never think in terms of your past career. You're sort of in the middle of it. But now, of course, I can look back and say I can remember when I would be working with older actors and they would have all these wonderful stories to tell. And I used to think, gee, I don't have any stories to tell. Well, now I do because I'm one of the older actors.
Well, you know, I've never seen you as an older actor. I just think you're a seasoned veteran in the business, and you know you're loved by so many worldwide. And continually to this day, you just continue to have this legion of fans. One of which is myself, and it's just your career has just been unbelievably phenomenal. And so we are just so glad that you're with us this evening again. Now, I understand, you know, I'm glad that you're taking a few days off because I understand that you have been very busy of late and that recently you and several others were honored by our military on September 11th. And the ceremony had special significance for you. Can you share about that with us?
Well, for me it was a great honor because my father, of course, served in World War II, and my husband is a Vietnam veteran who was wounded in the belly, and so I guess I've never thought of myself as a military brat, they say, but I am, and I'm also going to be a spokesperson for something an organization called the Spirit of 45, which is quite an interesting. I'm really honored to be part of it. It's basically trying to bring to young people's attention that wonderful generation of men who served in World War II and Korea and also Vietnam, and to talk about character of these people, and hopefully helping young people look for the character within themselves. We were talking the other day, and I said, I asked my father why he signed up 3 times to go over to fight in Germany, and when he had 3 children and he had spinal meningitis, so they kept turning him down, and he kept volunteering, and finally they did send him over. And I said, why did you do that? You didn't have to. And he said, because it was the right thing to do.
Oh, wow. And I go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, first of all, I applaud you for becoming, a spokesperson for that, because I think in our society today, especially with young people, the more that we can kind of impress upon them those types of qualities and character traits, I think they're so much better for it. We live in such a fast-paced world that sometimes they don't slow down long enough to really see where we once were, and how we got to where we are today. And I think it's so important for our youth of today to have that background and to have that history that, it's those men and women who fought in those wars that are the reason why we have the freedoms we do. And, it's just a long-standing thing that we should never forget.
You're right on the money, Dawn, and it's true. I think nowadays the trap, or I think that young people are falling into a little bit, is that it's not cool to do the right thing, and when in truth it's much simpler to do the right thing. And I think that was part of the appeal of the Waltons, was these were people who did the right thing and were honest and hardworking, and if there were consequences to be suffered, they suffered them, I went to school in England when I was 11 years old. It was a boarding school. And in England at that time, if you did something wrong, you owned up. If the teacher said who was talking, you raised your hand and said, I was talking. And if you didn't, nobody would tell on you, but they wouldn't speak to you, the other girls, because it wasn't the right thing to do. You did the right thing. And you learned to take the consequences, to suffer the consequences of your actions. And it wasn't so bad,
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, how in the world did you get into acting? Because, obviously your father was in the military, and you studied in England, and how did that happen for you? Was that something you aspired to do, or did it just kind of happen and find you, so to speak?
Well, I think the latter. It's kind of found me. I was 11 when we moved to Austria. My father was working for the OSS, which you probably know then became the CIA. So he was a spook, actually. He was a spy. And we lived in this tiny little beautiful village in Austria. It was absolutely like the sound of music, and especially in 1950, because there were no cars, and it was only 5 years after the war had ended. So everything was very simple at that time and lovely. It was I loved being there. But I had wanted to be a ballet dancer in those days, and I was sort of in the minority in that tiny little village. And it was suggested that my mother suggested, why don't you try out for the Sadler's Wells in England? So I did, and they turned me down. They said I was too tall and had flat feet, but I suspect it was just that I wasn't really good enough. And we found another school which also had a drama department, so I went in ostensibly to study to be a dancer, but I became a special drama student instead. And that really gave me a career, even though I was miserable the whole time. I hated being in boarding school, but I was homesick. But the teacher would say, Michael, could you cry a bit more quietly, please? Because I was always in the back of the room crying. but it did give me a career, and I'm very grateful for it.
I was about to say, and the rest, they say, is history. I mean, look where you are today. And most significantly, I mean, fans came to know and love you pretty much for the first time through your portrayal of Olivia Walton on The Waltons. And, you had been in acting for quite a while prior. Would you consider this to be like your breakout role?
Well, I had the great good fortune to be at a repertory company in San Francisco called the American Conservatory Theater. So I was playing, Cleopatra in Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, and in Private Lives, Noel Coward, and I was doing, it was basically a classical theater, so I was playing great roles, and I didn't think I was right for the part of Olivia Walton because I was younger. I was about 10 years younger than the age they were looking for. And I honestly, to be truthful, I didn't see myself as a farm woman. I thought of it as a character role. And I'd just been playing, some pretty glamorous, wonderful theatrical roles. And so it was one of those gifts that I didn't recognize until well into it. And I didn't think for a minute I would ever get it, and I didn't even want to try out for it, to tell you the truth. I wanted to stay in San Francisco and stay with that theater. But I was in L.A., and my agent just kept pestering me to go see about this part. So I did, and they asked me if I would test, and I said, okay. And I was pretty much of a mess at the time. I won't go into details, but I was pretty much of an emotional wreck, and I had 3 kids to support, and lo and behold, I was given the gift of this part, and I honestly do believe it was God-directed.
Well, I have to say to you, Michael, I am so thankful that you, even though you were reluctant, that you took the part. You tried out, and you not only took the part, but you got the part, because honestly, in my years of watching The Waltons, and even now that it's in syndication and we see it all, I watch it daily still, I could never imagine another person playing Olivia Walton. I mean, you were so iconic in that role, and I mean, it was just you and Ralph. I mean, just were kind of like the mom and dad everybody wanted.
Me too.
You had all the right. I mean, seriously, you said all the right things. It was so well written, so well scripted, and yet it was so believable because it was just the kind of family that you just sat there week in, week out, and you said, man, what I would give to be in a family just like that, with real problems, but yet they always come together when they need to, and it was just wonderful. I mean, and I applaud you for being in that role because I really couldn't envision anybody else doing it, to tell you the truth.
That is so kind of you, and that means the world to me. We spent long hours on a set together, and luckily we all adored each other, really as a family to this day. In fact, I've just been texting with Mary McDonough, who played Erin, and we just finished doing a photo shoot for Entertainment Weekly, and the entire cast, original cast, was there. Ralph was there, and Richard. And it's always like a family reunion for us. We just love each other. I burst into tears. We were doing a little interview for Good Morning America, and I started to talk about what these people mean to me, and I burst into tears. It was so embarrassing, but it was like suddenly my heart realized how dear they all are, and when you spend those long hours with a group of people, it's a great good fortune to happen to love them at the same time.
Oh, definitely. And since the Waltons, wrapped as a show, there have been several TV movies that have come about, reunion TV movies. And if there was another installment in the future, I mean, would you sign on to do it? I mean, of course, fans would want it, but would it depend on your schedule? Would it just be a no-brainer for you?
Right now, of course, Ralph and I would be Grandma and Grandpa. And I don't really think I really almost wish we hadn't done the movies, to tell you the truth. I feel the show was what it was, and especially when the kids were little, there was something very special about it. And, I almost wish it had been left, as it was rather than trying to recreate it, because it wasn't, the movies don't have the same kind of care in them that the show itself had when we were doing it, I think. So I don't think I'd want to do another, not that they're going out of their way to offer it to us. I'm not sure I'd want to do it. But, the enticement is always is the fact that we love to be together, so it's like, oh, well, let's do it because we'll be together kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, do you have a personal favorite episode or scene from the show?
Well, a couple of fans have put together things on YouTube of Ralph and me, and one of them was so touching to me that I happened to, I don't even know how because I don't go looking for this stuff, but I just happened to come across it, and I started to cry watching it. I thought, my God, we had such a wonderful chemistry together.
You did.
And I called Ralph and I said, I just want to thank you for your performance in the Waltons, because all I did was react to you. And that's true. He was so wonderful as John Walton. And really, all I did was just react to him. He was so warm and exuberant and loving. And I think some of our scenes together are... So one of my favorite episodes, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, was the anniversary. I like the anniversary.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, there were so many shows. I can't tell you that I have a personal favorite, because there was something favorite about every character on the show. With John Boy, I always loved to write when I was young, so I could identify with his writing and his love of writing. And then there was the episode where, the family was considering building a new house, and the sentimental value of the memories that were in that house, the original house. And, as these things unfolded as a viewer, you're just kind of living it with the whole Walton family, because you could kind of feel yourself being pulled in and experiencing those things right along with the family. And I think that was the beauty and the magic of the show for the fans, and I'm sure as well as for the cast.
Well, I think a lot of that was because of Earl Hamner, the creator of the show, and really the real life John Boy. I think he was writing from his heart and from his childhood experiences. I mean, not everything was exactly the way it was for him as a child, but I think he drew on a lot of his childhood experiences, and he really was the heart of the show. And his writing, I think that particular show, a lot of the writing in that show was Earl. So he's a poet in his own way, and there's a speech that John Boy had about all the memories, which I think is what you're talking about, and it's a beautiful speech, and I'm pretty sure Earl wrote it.
And I take it back. I'm remiss. I do have a favorite episode, as I'm thinking about this now in hindsight. The Christmas episode, the very first episode, the pilot of the Waltons.
That
episode was, yes, and I remember every year at Christmas they would show it on local television, and then for years after they stopped showing it, and that was just like one of the highlights of my Christmas Eve or my Christmas season, was to know that episode of the Waltons was going to be shown, because there was so much meaning and so much lesson just steeped in that episode. It was unbelievable that it just stayed with you. And I was so disappointed. Even to this day, I still look for it, hoping I'll catch it somewhere, because it is a classic. And it's just one of those episodes that will always be, no matter what.
Well, I agree with you. We had a big reunion in New Jersey a few years ago, and they showed it on the big screen. And, I thought this should be shown every year at Christmas. I'm not in it. I mean, it's Patricia Neal who played the mother in that, and I thought she was brilliant. And the whole show has the whole charm of those kids, and it was shot on location in it's timeless, and it held up beautifully on the big screen.
It has, very much so. It is timeless, and I even went so far as to try to find it, to try to purchase it so I could have a copy for myself. It's nowhere to be found. It's very hard to find, even. And
really, I wonder why that is. I have no idea why that would be. I mean, it's just. I don't know whether that's because they replaced her with me, and so I'm more identified in the role. But it doesn't matter. It just stands on its own. It doesn't even need to be called. It's not the Waltons. It's called The Homecoming. So just on its own merit, it's just timeless and beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, it is.
And the kids are great in it.
Oh, they are. And like you said, the charm. That is what I think. That episode is what made people just fall in love with the Waltons, and then as the series ran for as long as it did, and even to this day, I mean, the series continues to be popular with viewers worldwide. And why do you think, Michael, that the Waltons are still one of the most beloved families around, and people still keep watching?
Well, you're going to be surprised by my answer, but I think it's because they weren't perfect. People in retrospect sort of say, oh, well, they were so perfect and everybody was so perfect. Well, they really weren't. I mean, if you think about it, Grandma and Grandpa were were always kind of sniping at each other and bickering. And Olivia was kind of rigid in her religious beliefs as opposed to Pa Walton, who was a little kind of looser, and the kids would squabble with each other, and we were not the perfect family, and I think that was part of its charm, and I think it was part of the challenge for Earl, who was writing about his own family. So it was difficult for him sometimes. I went up to him once and said, "Didn't your mother ever make a mistake? You got to have every parent makes mistakes. No matter how wonderful we are, we make mistakes." And he said, "No, I don't think she did." But I said, "You gotta make Olivia a little more human." So I think that did creep into the show, where we weren't always just this perfect family.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I like the fact. I think for many viewers, myself included, the Waltons were real to us, even though it was a television program. It was a series. The Waltons were very real because there were real-life scenarios and real-life problems, real-life solutions, but yet there was always this, every episode held this, this era of conflict that was resolved, but it was always there to kind of challenge you as a viewer to say, it was believable because in essence, you could see it happening in real life, in your own life. And then there was an identity factor because at the same time, if anyone had experienced same, they could say, so this is how this was handled. It was just brilliant the way it was done and the way Earl Hamner wrote. He had so many lessons to share for us all that I think were just great seeds that were planted to be carried forward.
That's a lovely thing for you to say, and I hope Earl will read this interview because I have told him over and over again what a great legacy he has left. I have people coming up to me saying, you taught me how to be a mother, and I'm smart enough to know that I didn't teach them how to be a mother. My character did, but nonetheless, that show has had such an impact on so many people that it is really an amazing legacy because it will get passed on from generation to generation long after the show isn't on the air anymore, through mother to child to their children. Certain concepts and certain ways of behaving. That doing the right thing.
I agree. I mean, I have 3 children of my own. They've all watched the Waltons, and when I've explained this was a part of my childhood, this was part of, my teen years, it's interesting to them today as it was to me then, and still is. And I
really?
think it's great, not only, yes, and they love it. Especially my youngest daughter, she's 15, but, she and my mom, that's kind of their thing. They will watch it, and so it's just really interesting how you say, it is a generational thing, and it's a great way for families, especially in this fast-paced world we're in, to sit down and still have something to sit down and watch together. And that never goes out of style, in my opinion.
That really fills my heart, and it makes me feel very humble. And I have to tell you, there were times in my own fast-paced life, because I had 5 boys at home that I was trying to raise as well as doing the series, and there were times I'd be sitting on that front porch with Ellen Corby, who played Grandma, and we'd be shelling peas and doing a scene on the back lot, and I would think, God, I wish my life was like this, because it was a nostalgic time when things seemed to be simpler, even though it was during the Depression when it was hard times for everybody, but they were simpler hard times. The world is very complex now, and there's so much stimulus, cell phones and texting and, email and computers and radio and television and flat screens and blah, 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 that life is more complicated.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think if we had to endure our own, depression of the 20s now, it would be impossible to endure, because we have become a society that's so acclimated to, technology being the driving force for everything. It would be very hard, and simpler times, I think, sometimes are much, much better and easier for people. But unfortunately, I'm afraid the world in which we live now, simpler times have become a nostalgic pastime almost, and that's really sad in a way.
I agree with you, but perhaps that's for us. I look at the younger. I mean, I can remember when you just got on a plane. You didn't stand in line and go through security. You just went up and bought a ticket and got on a plane, and usually you could afford the ticket.
Yeah.
And now I see young people standing in lines, security lines that go around the block, and nobody's complaining because that's what they're used to. They don't have a memory of a time when you didn't have to do that. So maybe for younger people, this technology, my granddaughter can send me 7 texts in the time that it takes me to read her first text, and it's just second nature to her. I mean, she was born texting, but for me, it's like this huge thing. And I'm an old person now, but I am busier now than I ever was when I had 3 kids to raise, oddly enough, and because I think there's so much else to do. I check my emails, I check my text, I get voicemails on my cell phone, I get voicemails at home. There's all this stuff going on that wasn't going on when I was a young woman with 3 kids. I just had my kids and my husband and a job. Yeah, and that was enough.
Yeah. Well, I have to talk to you about this because I think it's important, and I also want to applaud you for this as well. But, in 2011, many of your fans, myself included, got to see you portray Kathleen Chancellor on, Young and the Restless, filling in for Jeannie Cooper when she took ill. And I must say, when CBS introduced you as the Kathleen Chancellor of the moment, I was so excited. I was like, there she is. But, of course, I'm thinking there's Olivia Walton. No, it's Michael Learned. Okay, let's get it straight. And I'm totally joshing. But I was so excited because I thought of all the actresses out there that they could have picked to fill in for Jeannie Cooper. I am so elated that they chose you because I knew that you in that role would do it justice. And so did you ever have the privilege of working with Jeannie in your time, as an actress throughout your career?
I never have, and as a matter of fact, she was quite ill at the time that I stepped in for her. It was a big shock to me because I'd never heard. I said, how can anybody step in for Jeannie Cooper? I mean, she is that show. And I was very nervous about it because I didn't know any of the storylines, and I didn't know. I was just kind of intimidated, but she was so kind. She wrote me the sweetest letter, and I wrote back to her and said, I'm not even going to try to fill your shoes, but I'll try to hold the fort until you get back, and that's the best I can do. And so we had a nice little correspondence back and forth, and I was very sad when she passed away. But she was with that show from the beginning. I think it was something like 38 years or something, a long time. and she really was the show. I mean, she was an extraordinary person, and I was very sorry when she died, even though I did not know her personally.
Well, and to, again, I have to go back to, of all the actresses they could have selected, I mean, for you to be able to come in to that role and play it the way you did, because the thing I loved about you being in it was very apparent you were not trying to fill any shoes. You were just trying to, like you said, hold the fort down. I think the fans really appreciated that, and they were, very glad that you were there, because it was, it really did flow. I felt seamlessly and effortlessly. It was a great moment. And at the same time, they needed, the Catherine Chance, their character, to kind of be in those scenes at that time. And so I thought it was a very smart move on CBS's part to have you come back, especially since the Waltons. I was nostalgic about it, because here I was thinking the whole time, here CBS had the Waltons on Thursday nights, and here they had kind of pulled you in to do this. And I thought that was just brilliant. So I'm very glad, and kudos to you for being there.
Thank you. I was terrified, but everybody on the show was so kind. And, of course, what was confusing, too, was that they were doing past shows, just catching up little segments of shows that, unfortunately, she'd had to miss. So there was no flow to it. So half the time I didn't even know what I was talking about. But the cast, they were all, to a man, they were kind and supportive, and somebody would sit down and I'd say, are we having an affair, or are you my son? And they'd say, no, we're not having an affair, and I'm not your son, but this is who I am, and this is our relationship. And I'd say, okay, thank you very much, and then we'd play the scene.
Oh, that's funny. That is so funny. Well, Michael, I cannot thank you enough for your time this evening and taking time away from your vacation to just come on and speak with us about the Waltons and your amazing career. And you are wonderful, and I really can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. You've put a big smile on my face. You're so complimentary. I really appreciate your sweetness. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it as well, but it is just an honor to have you here, and I just want to say again thank you for all that you've given us through the years, and all that we've been able to see in you as an actress and as who you are. And so thank you so much for your contribution and just being, just giving us so many wonderful years of great entertainment.
Well, bless you, Dawn. Thanks.
Thank you, and enjoy your vacation, and take care.
Okay, will do. You too.
All right. Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I am just beyond words. And you know me, folks, I am never speechless, but talking to her for the last 33 minutes was, it just absolutely blew me away. I mean, she is a legend in her own time. Michael Learned, I mean, this is a woman that I have sat and watched on television, on the Waltons, and in other things, pretty much all my life, as far back as I can remember at least. And I am so incredibly blown away right now. It is like a surrealness. What a lovely, lovely human being. Michael Learned. She is as sweet to talk to in real life as she has always come across on screen. And so I think we have had a great treat in seeing her through the years. And so we definitely appreciate her time this evening and thank her so very much for being our special guest. And that is actually going to wrap our show, folks. And I hope that you enjoyed the last half hour or so as much as I have. And if you're a first-timer, as I like to call it, a first time here, welcome aboard, and you picked a great night to join our show and to tune in. So we really appreciate you being here. And to all the loyal listeners, thank you again for coming back time and time again and for helping make our show what it is. So with that, I am going to say thank you again, and that will be it for tonight. Now, coming up tomorrow night, we have a great guest. Her name is Sandra Lloyd. she will be on at 7 p.m. Eastern, and she is actually president and founder of the Hollywood Networking Breakfast. And that is a monthly breakfast that takes place, I think, the third Thursday of every month in Hollywood. And they always have a guest speaker to come in, and it's a great place for people to go and network. I mean, ordinary people like myself can go. You can pay, you can register, you can go, and you can listen to these speakers, and you can network with actors and directors. It's a really great thing, and it's been going on for a little over 20 years now. They just celebrated their 20th anniversary. So we will be speaking with the president and founder of that, Sandra Lloyd, tomorrow evening about all of this and finding out all about it. So we look forward to that. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern. So, again, our very, very special thanks to Michael Learned for being our guest this evening and to all of you for tuning in and joining us. And with that, I will say good night, and we'll see you right back here again tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a great evening, all. God bless. Good night.
Thanks for listening to tonight's show. You can connect to Behind the Mic Radio on Twitter at BT Mic Radio and on Facebook at Behind the Mic Radio. Check out our website at BehindTheMicRadio.com. Also, follow us right here on Blog Talk Radio, where you can stay up to date on all upcoming shows. Every episode is available for immediate download upon the conclusion of each broadcast and, as always, on iTunes. Thank you for joining us.